This is Chris Albert, and I'm here to remind you of one thing. Someday, you're going to die. Now, that's not some morbid statement or scary idea. It's solid fact. Your time here on this earth is limited. And you need to be reminded of this as much as possible for one simple reason. To live your best life while you can. This is the Warrior Soul Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Warrior Soul Podcast. It's early morning here in my house and everybody's sleeping, so I am speaking in hushed tones. So hopefully I'm not putting you guys asleep out there. But today we got a really special episode. We are starting a new segment each week where we're partnering up with one of my good friends in the podcasting world, Mr. Mike Ergo. If you're not familiar with who Mike Ergo is, he's the host of the Transitions from War podcast. And I highly suggest you go back and you check out the episode we did with him. Mike is a Marine Corps veteran, a former drug addict, and is a competitive triathlete. And he travels around and he does triathlons. And each race he does, he carries around the flag representing a Gold Star family and a service member who we've lost. Mike's a really amazing person, a really amazing Marine, and a good friend of mine and a good friend of the show. So we talked about it and we said, you know what? Each week we are going to do a segment on each other's show. And this is the start of a new Veterans Podcast Network. And our network is going to be dedicated to getting you guys the tools, the tactics, the ideas, everything you need to live your best life. And today we started out with a book review. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the books we read. We have a lot of plans to read a lot of books this year in 2019. And the first book we're talking about this year is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Really love this book. Highly suggest you get the audio version. Really amazing effort that David and his ghostwriter put into it. It's like a combination audiobook / podcast, and highly suggest you check it out. But Mike and I, we talk about it and reflect on our own experiences with it, and hopefully you find all of this helpful. Before we get into that episode, I just want to say that the Warrior Soul Podcast is brought to you by F-Bomb Nutrition. They make awesome, delicious packets of fats, amazing macadamia nut butters. They mix them up with chocolate. They mix them up with sea salt. They mix them up with pecan butter. They're so delicious. And they also make these amazing cheese snacks. So definitely check them out. You can find them at www.droppinfbomb.com and use the code WarriorSoul at checkout to get 20% off your first order. With that, let's get into this conversation with Mr. Mike Ergo from Transitions from War on the book of the week. Talk to you guys soon.
Cool, man.
And we're recording. Awesome.
What up?
What's up, man? I think are we the only people who podcast at like 5 a.m.?
I think so, man. There's probably some people. Maybe Jocko does, right?
Jocko, yeah. Right after.
No, he's working out at this time, right?
He right when he finishes taking his like 4:30 a.m. Picture, and then he slays it and takes the picture of all the sweat on the ground. Maybe that's when he starts podcasting.
No, man, I don't think Echo gets up that early, but
yeah.
well, let's say what's up to the crowd. This is kind of a new thing we're doing now, and we decided to take everything together. I guess we'll say who I am. I'm Chris Albert from the Warrior Soul Podcast, and decided to team up with Mike here from Transitions from More on a special project, right?
Yeah, because we just talked about how, as vets who are podcasting, we have audiences who probably have a lot in common, and we have a lot of things to talk about, whether it comes to our impressions on different books in the vet community that people should be reading, our thoughts on ketogenic diet, a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. So this is going to be like a segment, and it's going to travel between the two podcasts. So we're starting off, we're going to publish this episode to both of our shows. And then, each week we'll be trading off. We'll be appearing on each other's podcast and, talking about a book, talking about a special subject, talking about something to do with helping you to live a better life and live your best life and, make things the way they should be.
Oh, cool.
We both got coffee right now.
That's really the only way to be up this early. So yeah, I'm digging the mug there. If you can see it, is this one right here. It's one of my sister made of a wiener dog with a ketchup and mustard being poured on it.
That's kind of sick, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of sick. I got an owl.
That's solid, man. Wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So man, you said you recently finished Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And that was a book I read. I think I finished it just before Christmas. So what are your thoughts on the thing, man? That book was a motherfucker.
Well, there's a couple of things, man. Number one, like, because I listened to the audio book versus actually reading it. And because I wanted to listen to it while I was doing some exercise just to kind of get in the mood and everything like that. Right.
Same here. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. The audio book's got some special components to it. I mean, it's like a combined audio book / podcast where you got David coming on and talking with its ghost author about the different chapters in the book. And then, I mean, it started out really brutal, man. He's had a really, really crazy life.
Worse than I thought too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was pretty bad. The thing is, one thing I got from it is we've all got our own shit, right? And a lot of people would look at David Goggins right now and be like, oh, he's led such an awesome life and done all these different things and served in the Navy SEALs and, ran all these races and things like that. The thing but if you look at the first couple of chapters of that book, he had such a bad childhood. So many things went wrong. So many things could have gone wrong in his life. And it's like his life actually happened for him, right? It made him tough. It made him into the person he is. And you could look at anybody's childhood, like you could look at my childhood, or you could look at, anybody else's childhood and say, oh, you have all these reasons to screw up. But he looked at it as he had all these reasons to succeed after a while, right? It took him a long time, a lot of work to do that.
The perspective that was key on that.
Yeah, that was the transition I saw in him, right?
Yeah, he had plenty of opportunity to and he talks about it at times, to fall back and come up with that victim mentality of, oh, it's not going to work out because this is who I am. And he describes that a little in his high school years. But it's an interesting shift. I think he was faced with so much adversity, and it was tough to listen to. It's like after a while on the childhood part, I just said, all right, this is a lot. This is a lot. And it was a bummer to listen to, but it really set the stage for a cool story. But what I got from it is that at a certain point, he kind of he snapped out of that and started looking in the mirror and started talking to himself, which came up to be one of his challenges in the book. And that's what I like the audio version for, because he had these challenges for everyone to do. And like he talks about it, this book, he says, is not about me. It's about you. And he starts with, the simple one, like the accountability mirror, putting something down that you want to do, need to do, and have yourself look at it in that mirror, and to really let it sink in. Mm-hmm. So he's got a lot of interesting thoughts too. Like when we talked about how motivation is just crap, and that any day of the week, purpose is going to beat motivation. And as soon as I could wrap my head around that, I agreed with it, because at first, I think purpose and motivation for me kind of overlapped a little bit. So what I thought, but once I figured out what he said, that YouTube motivation or just hearing something to make you feel good in the moment, yeah, that's not going to last, when you're, let's say, halfway through a marathon or something.
Well, yeah. And I mean, we're like 20, 21, 22 days into the new year, right? And we just had everybody do their New Year's resolutions. Like everybody's trying to hit the gym and things like that. The problem is this, a lot of those people, their goals that they have there, the goals they're motivated to get, they're not necessary for you to live your life, right? So like if you want to lose 25 pounds, or you want to have a 30-inch waist, or you want abs or something like that, you can be perfectly okay with your life the way it is without those, right?
Exactly.
But this is the thing. If you think about it another way, if your purpose in life is centered around those goals that you have, like you attach those goals to, I need to become a better father, or I need to become, something bigger. You attach those to your career, you attach those to who you are. Then it becomes, all right, it doesn't matter if whatever inconvenience is thrown my way, I'm going to keep going for those, right? Because with the 30 pounds, just trying to get the abs, as soon as life gets hard, you end up throwing those goals out, and because they're nice to haves, right? Yeah. But if they're attached to your purpose and being, you're going to keep going with them, right? You'll go outside if it's snowing and raining, you'll still get a run in. You'll still get to your car so you can get to the gym. You'll figure out ways to do things.
It's like something that's at your core, something that is there even when you're right, it's snowing out, it's raining out. Because the thing that I gathered from that too is something I've heard from other self-help books, talking about the different kinds of motivations. The things being, motivated by external validation, internal validation, and then a pro-social, or something that you're doing that will help other people. And so those, especially that last one, like you said, the external motivation, if you want to have abs and then you just show up to the gym for a few weeks and it's not happening, no one's going to notice if you stop going. Your life's not going to change too much.
Right. Exactly. There's so much there too. I mean, like no matter what you're doing in life, if it's centered on things that are nice to haves, then you're not going to follow through. Like you've got to bring it into your core being. You got to bring it into who you are. And it's got to be something that turns into, something that's as essential as brushing your teeth, or, drinking coffee in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. What I like too about the book is, I think, his way of talking, just so direct. And so it cuts through all the bullshit. He talks about just calling things as they are and not trying to dance around with pretty words. Like, how many times in the book do I remember him saying or talking about someone and said he couldn't do something, or this wasn't the right way to do it. And then the next sentence is, and I said, fuck that shit. And it's hilarious. At first it was hard on the audio version to hear the other guy rate it, his ghostwriter. But once, I got into it, it was a little easier to take down. But there's something refreshing about that. I think, especially as a vet, because there's one thing to be swearing without purpose, but it's so ingrained in the culture that it brought me back to that mentality of what it was like to be an active duty Marine, and what it was like to really not be limited by hardship, but just to connect to that purpose and get them, continue the mission, get it done.
Well, yeah, man, it's almost more about embracing the hardship behind it, and understanding that that's going to be part of it, and understanding that you're going to go through those things, and you talked about that, with your first triathlon and kind of being comfortable with the pain and understanding that it's going to be present. It's going to be there. You're not going to get away from it. What I got from David Goggins' book is, the pain's going to be there. It's going to be there in your face. And I'm not a distance runner or an endurance athlete like you are. But that kind of hit home with me. It's, when he's talking about, barely being able to pick up his legs and barely being able to take a step, or getting to the point where, he's like seeing double on the road because he's done so many miles and his body just wasn't prepared for it. I think that's something that we all need to try to get in our lives, is to be a little bit more comfortable with the pains we face as we're trying to do hard things.
That's so important, because what I came to realize at a certain point, and it's something that I have to come back to quite often to remind myself, is that if being uncomfortable isn't a limiting factor for us, then we can do a lot of things. Like if we're willing to be uncomfortable, then we can do it. But it takes that willingness and really that conscious awareness of what that feels like. Because I think if any of us really take a look in the mirror, we can see that we do a lot of things not because it's a purpose or it's because it's a motivator for us, but we do a lot of things to avoid discomfort.
We do. And the thing is too, and that translates to almost everything, right? People stick around in their lives without changing anything. And I know so many people who've wanted to build the business for years, but haven't done it because they just don't want to go through the initial pain, that initial startup phase where their money's a little bit tight and they don't know if it's going to be a success or anything like that. I know so many people who sit on their ideas for years before they pull the trigger on anything. And, there's a lot of people out there who wanted to improve their lives, right? And it goes to so many levels. I mean, if you've been through drug abuse and trying to change your behaviors and trying to change your mentality about everything that happened to you. And, there's the discomfort of going through that change. And then there's the discomfort of trying to accomplish something, trying to complete a race, or trying to build a business, or trying to do anything with your life. And there's so many opportunities for you to say, you know what, I'm comfortable right where I am. I don't need anything else. And I'll just stick right here and be content.
It is. And I think when we make those decisions, or when I've realized that I've made those decisions, there's a little disappointment that sets in, and kind of, part of my heart just kind of dies, feels sad, looking at the times where I've compromised to become comfortable. Not to say that rest time isn't important, and not to say that recovery time isn't important, especially after a big accomplishment or a race. But what I liked about Can't Hurt Me was that David Goggins was willing to endure any pain. And without spoiling it for people who are going to read it, the methods he used to get through Hell Week for a third time it's beyond my comprehension of how someone could do that. But what was your favorite part about the book? or favorite chapter or favorite aspect of it?
My favorite period of the book was he'd gotten out of the Air Force and he was working as a like a Terminex guy, an exterminator, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the part of the book that holds a lot of lessons, because again, he's in a position where a lot of guys are out there, right? He's you know, at that point he's gotten out of the Air Force. He served in the Air Force Special Operations, and he became a Terminex guy, which is a good steady job. But there were things that weren't right in his life, and he had a wife that he loved, you know what I mean, who he grew up with. It was like his dream girl from high school and everything like that. And then he just wasn't happy with his life. And for a lot of us, you know, we're living our everyday lives, and there's something that's not making us happy that we can't put our finger on. But he kind of figured it out. He figured it out because he understood that he didn't want to be living that life just doing the predictable thing, you know, going to work every day, killing rats, killing bugs, things like that. He wanted something a little bit more, and he was willing to put himself through the discomfort to do that. And, you know, him dropping 100 pounds in, what was it, 3 months or something like that?
Yeah, it was like insanity. Like he spent his life around working out all day and eating right, and just sole focus was getting in shape to prepare for buds.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. And then hearing about him, you know, he'd go into his local park and jump in the lake, and then go running along the dog walking trail afterwards, and people looking at him like he's crazy. But I think that's so cool, you know, just using your environment.
Yeah. It, like, he didn't have a special training facility, right?
Yep.
He didn't have like a CrossFit gym or, you know, coaches testing his sweat rate and his metabolism. He didn't have any of this. He wasn't pissing on keto sticks or anything like that. He was using what he had, you know, a lake, a dog park, running trails, you know, a stationary, like you can picture this shitty stationary bike that he's on, and you know, it wasn't a good one. And he used that to get into the shape he needed. So what I love about that is it relates to anyone who is willing to decide that they will find the way can do what he did.
Right.
And it was hard to listen to. I think part of it, he talked about, some of it came off as, you know, braggadocious. Like he was listing his accomplishments and talking about how he was the best of this and the best of that. And that part, it was a little uneasy for me to listen to until I started thinking, well, he was. And he was just as soon to call himself out when he messed up. And so he lives an extreme lifestyle. And so if he did something well, he'd say, yeah, I was the best at this. And if he messed something up, he'd say, yeah, I really fucked that up.
Well, dude, you know what was an interesting thing for me, because I was putting myself back in the Marine Corps, and I was trying to think of what I would be like if some dude came in and was like, oh, y'all are just soft. Your PT sucks. We're going to do an 8-mile run, and then we're going to finish it off with a ruck with a 50-pound pack. And we're going to go for 5 miles after that. And then we're going to come back and we're going to lift some weights. Like, I was thinking about what my mind would have been like in my unit at that point, because he faced a lot of resistance to the SEAL teams, because he was more hardcore than the SEAL teams. Like, how do you think he would have responded at that point?
I think if I can put myself back when I was in, I would have said, fuck this guy. And I would have thought of some of the very ambitious officers that came in and would try to change things and try to up the level. And because my level of self-awareness was pretty low at that point, my maturity level was a lot lower than it is now. And so I would have did that completely.
Oh yeah, totally. I would have been like, dude, I'm going to sit here. I got my Copenhagen. I'm going to friggin', get my shit ready for tomorrow.
Yeah.
You go UPT, you do what you got to do. And we'll see you in the morning at regular PT,
Yeah, exactly. I can just be like, look, I'm still either drunk or hungover. So
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, go for it, man. But just don't get me involved.
Yeah. Like go try out for recon or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I can see that.
Yeah. The other thing that was cool was like, cause he goes through that with the SEALs, right? So he, within the SEAL teams, he was a psychopath, like, which is pretty crazy in and of itself. But people don't realize, I mean, SEALs, just like, I mean, it's not like any other job, but it's just like any other job, right? You go in, you got to do your work. You got people who are there. They're part of the old guard, and people just, trying to skate by. And then this guy comes in, he's trying to do that. So he went and he tried out for, well, I don't want to spoil the book, but he tried out for Delta Force. And that was a whole period in and of itself too.
It was interesting, just the resistance he faced among, I think, the SEAL community and among people in general. But what I gathered from that is he liked that. And I think he went into that. He talked about how he liked being oppositional, and it helps him really to thrive. Just being opposed and people telling him he couldn't do that. And that goes back to what you said about his upbringing, really set the conditions for how he did that.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And then, you look at his upbringing too. I mean, growing up in Buffalo, New York, the way he did with his father, and you guys got it. The most intense parts of the book are toward the beginning in his childhood. Like, I gotta say that much. Like,
it was hard to believe how a kid could survive.
Yeah, that was the hardest shit a kid could go through, and I felt for him at that point because, whenever I hear about a kid going through shit like that, it just pisses me off.
Yeah, that was difficult to hear, and part of me wanted to stop listening at that point because it was just so uncomfortable and sad.
Let's think about it this way, though, because, and a lot of people out there are going to try to get some lessons from what we're going to say here. But, think about David Goggins, his father, right? What happened? What was it that made David Goggins the way he was, right? The way he was to David and his brother. And what do you think it was?
Probably the same that he dished out, abuse, having to hustle, scarcity, lack of support from parental figures and lack of guidance on how to be.
Yeah. And fear, overall fear, right? Fear.
Yeah.
When you have undealt with fear in your life, that's going to come out in some freaking way. Right. And that's the thing. He took it out on his kids, right? He had fear of either, being poor. He had fear of not having his business be as successful as he wanted it to be. He had fear of being alone. I think in a lot of ways there was a lot of fear in that dude's life.
Oh yeah.
And he was taking it out on his kids.
And especially the way he lived his life too, doing shady things, that just fed into his fear. His purpose was making money, and he had to watch his back because he knew he was screwing people over to help himself and other people, and only helping other people in so far as it would help him. So that fear was probably magnified, and that's why the family got the brunt of his wrath.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So like, when you think of any one of us could end up like that, right? Like, that's what I always like to point out in literature like this, because, David Goggins is kind of like the villain at the beginning, but any one of us can end up like that, because I'm sure he thought, oh, I'm trying to put food on the family for my children. I'm trying to raise my sons to be tough, do all these things. You can justify anything in the world, and you can justify it through fear. And unless you're taking a good self-reflective look at your life and how you're dealing with those types of issues, then you can end up in a position where you're ruining somebody's life. You're putting yourself into a position where you're a monster.
That's the thing. I think you hit it right in the head. And that's probably the most important lesson we can all draw from the book, is that if you deny fear, or if you just try to decide that you're not going to face your fears, it's going to leak out into other parts of your life. It's trying to hold on to something that's going to leak out and affect and poison the rest of your life. But however, if you can have some self-awareness, enough to just look at, okay, what is going on here? What am I afraid of? And acknowledge that you are afraid of it, that there is fear there, and instead lean into it, go into that fear deeper, and decide to confront it by either taking up that challenge or talking to that person or whatever it is. Then you can truly deal with it. Doesn't mean you have to pretend like you're not afraid. You just have to be willing to face it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a big, big, big factor in anybody's personal development, because if you're not dealing with it, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. And, you know, and you look at the difference in the way David Goggins handled it. Like, and this is the thing, that's the other thing I got from the book. David Goggins, he's not a hero, and he's not trying to make himself into a hero. Right. That's the whole thing. Like, he's very imperfect in the way he approaches things, the way his life was laid out, the way he is, the way he still is, right? And he's not saying he's perfect. What he's saying is that he's fucked up as hell, and he's probably just as fucked up as his father was, but he dealt with it in different ways, and he pushed through in different ways, and he found different outlets for it.
I think so. And I think what I like about his approach to things is, and I heard him say this on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he goes into the book, instead of waiting for the conditions to be perfect to start, he is the ultimate example of finding something he likes and going for it, and then either figuring it out along the way or figuring it out towards the end. But he decides what he wants, and without much preparation, like that 100-mile race, when you read it, you'll see just how little he prepared for this thing. And it's not the greatest plan, but his point being that just go and start something. You know, don't wait for yourself to be perfect at it, because then you'll never start it.
Right. That's the thing. So let me ask you this, as an endurance guy, preparing for or racing 100-mile race without preparation,
insanity.
What are some of the things that would befall a person if they're going through that?
Train for a 100-mile race, or trying to
run 100 miles when you haven't prepared, because his first race, he didn't prepare it at all, right?
Yeah, your feet are gonna be on fire, your hips are gonna lock up, your back's gonna lock up. You're not gonna be able to. I think that maybe one of the most important things is dehydration and your body starting to shut down from lack of electrolytes. You know, so because the way he did it too is he's had some shit nutrition plan, like crackers and I think like, what is it, like Myoplex, like protein shake?
Yeah.
Your muscles are going to feel it, and your head's going to tell you just to stop. I mean, your entire body is going to be on fire after a while, because if you haven't built up the strength of being able to run that far, I mean, not only are you building up the strength in your feet and your calves and your quads and your hips and your core, but you're also building up that neuromuscular connection that helps your muscles be the most efficient they can be for that distance. Because as a distance runner, you don't want to be bulky. You want to have your muscles be only as big as they need to be, to keep your weight very light. But you need to be you need to have your muscles fire the most efficiently. Mm-hmm. And that gets built up over time, by repetition, by form.
Yeah, that's I don't know, man, because I don't know. We did a 8-mile endurance hike this weekend, right? And it was like a run hike, right? And we were up in the mountains, and dude, my feet, like the soles of my feet, they're so sore right now.
Yeah.
I just want to like get a ball and stretch those things out. Like it's, I've done 12-mile races, I did 12.5 mile Spartan Beast, and I felt like I was going to die after that, but I've been a powerlifter my whole life, and it's different kind of muscle firings, I guess. But
completely. I mean, what you're talking about, slow twitch and fast twitch muscles, and you're talking about there's explosiveness and then there's repetition. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're talking about reminds me too is that cramping up. I mean, that's going to happen, especially with the lack of electrolytes, lack of potassium in your body. But to think that you could just go from, I think he talked about only doing 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes a week on the elliptical machine to running 100 miles.
Yeah.
For most people, they're going to have those muscles cramping up and just be unable to keep going.
Have you ever been to that point?
I've been to a point. So earlier, let's see. Yeah. In 2018. Okay. So last year, then my first full Ironman carrying a flag for a Gold Star family, I got to the point of cramping up in the bike ride because I did not have my amino acid pills that I've had for every single race. And I'm glad I didn't, because it was a great way for me to learn, oh yeah, those things really work. Because I think it was like mile 30 of a 112-mile bike section. My legs started cramping up and my quads were seizing. And so I had to adjust my pedal stroke, and I had to adjust my cadence, and the same thing on the run too. Like I knew if I flexed my legs the wrong way, my whole leg would cramp up. And so I had to completely adjust how I ran for that. And I was hurting afterwards badly. So it's a real thing. It's a real thing, but fortunately, it wasn't my first race. If it had been, it would have been a lot harder for me to keep going, and a lot easier to kind of get into that negative mindset and just like be in the dungeon of my mind.
Mm. Yeah, that's rough, man. That's
rough. Yeah. I knew, because early in the bike ride, I mean, okay, 30 miles, is a decent ride, but I knew I was only a quarter of the way done or so. And I said, okay, if I'm starting to cramp up here, I still have most of the day ahead of me. So I just had to decide in my mind just to keep going and make adjustments that way. And then afterwards, I mean, that's the most I've hurt. Maybe not the most I've hurt after a race. Most of it hurt immediately though. But my body was seizing up, and I had this. At the end, they have a massage therapist to help you on the table and kind of massage some of that stuff out. And I was pretty badly hurting. And I said to the guy, like, just go so easy. And on the table, I seized up a few times. But the neat thing about that, and what Goggins' approach is to it, is, I remember what I liked about it. He would get into a race, like these 100-mile races, and just decide that, okay, what's the best I can do here, and to find a way. And so for him, it wasn't a matter of quitting, or it wasn't a matter of, okay, I'm going to go until it hurts this bad, or this is where I tap out. He said, no, I will finish. So how will I get there? It's just a matter of choosing a specific method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big part of it. From the big thing that I got from it, and then his method of chunking things down, right? Just chunking the race down, like just trying to get to that next point, and then get to that next point, and then get to that next point. I think particularly when he was doing like the Badlands 135, that was a big part of the book too.
That's huge. That short-term mindset, like it's like in boot camp, you live chow to chow from breakfast. You're like, we're going to get to lunch.
Exactly. Yeah. Chow to chow. That was funny. I stopped doing that after a while though, cause it made me too eager for chow. And like, I was like, yeah. So what I tried to do, because I'd go to chow, like, and a lot of times, like, cause with boot camp, it was a surprise, right? Like, cause you get in there and then all of a sudden, if it was a bad day, the friggin' they'd be like, all right, you sit down. As soon as the guide gets up, everybody gets up, right? Yeah. So as soon as the guide's finished eating, the guide would try to finish slowly, but the drill instructor would come up and quicken up his pace on the eating and everything like that. Get that forward in there now, and then everybody would get up, and sometimes it'd be like 2-3 minutes you had to eat. But if you didn't get enough food in, you'd be like all down on yourself for the rest of the day, and you'd be like, God damn it. I
make or break.
Fuck off this island.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but yeah, exactly. That short-term mindset is huge for me for racing, especially what's nice is an Ironman, they have the mile markers. And so, I break it down into, okay, I can be here right now. And then looking at, okay, that's one more mile, especially on the run. That's one more mile. And think about those little things. Because, if you're thinking about a finish line for 12 hours, you're going to be miserable for 12 hours. You can be absolutely miserable if you're just thinking about being done. And that's, what Goggins was able to do is break things down and chunk it and make the things like take a mountain of a problem or a challenge and break it down to like individual steps of how we get there. Yeah.
And it's, it's interesting because my, the sports, I was a competitive bodybuilder, which was, I don't think it's a lot of people say it's a difficult sport. I didn't think it was difficult because what I would do, I'd make it like the most enjoyable experience possible.
Yeah.
And like, I used to cook my food exactly the way I wanted. The only part that was crazy was like the last 2 weeks when I was starting to dehydrate myself, or just starting to get ready for the peaks and everything like that. But I feel like such a wuss when I'm listening to like David Goggins and everything like that on there because, I've changed my training up quite a bit. I do a lot more functional endurance and things like that. But back then, like my whole competitive experience was based off of how I looked. Like it was fun.
Well, with him too, I think everybody I've listened to or I've read their reviews of the book are saying they feel like a complete puss when they see that. Listen to David Goggins talk about how he approached things and trained. Even me, I think, okay, I train maybe for really the longest is maybe 5 hours would be the longest I train. And that'd be my long bike ride plus, like a brick run right afterwards. And that's at the very peak. Like right now I'm putting in an hour and a half, 2 hours at most. And you're listening to this guy talk about how, he's taping his legs up, how he's pushing himself, how he's like riding his bike to work for, 30 something miles and then doing Navy SEAL PT on top of it and then riding back home. And you're like, that's insanity. I feel like a complete wuss compared to that.
Yeah, that's crazy. What are your tricks for finding time to train? Like, what do you? Because I know you get a job too. You go out there, you
Yeah.
hit your stuff. What time of the day are you usually hitting it?
I get up at 5 and
Yeah.
I work out early. And that was the thing about that is I realized it's actually a lot easier to get up than I thought, because once again, it came back to, oh, if I'm willing to get up at 5, if I can say, oh, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll be tired. Oh, that's what all my resistance was about. So I go to bed earlier, and most nights, some nights I'll watch a TV show with my wife, because we've had a day of, taking care of kids all day. So, but most nights I'm going to bed early. I'm going to bed at sometimes 8:30 if I can, 9, and getting that sleep in so I can get up early and get that training in. The other way I'm doing it is building it into my environment. And by that, I mean, I went out and got a treadmill for under my desk where I could walk. And so if I have like a midday run in my schedule, part of that's a warm up and part of that's a cool down. And so those times can be on my walking treadmill. So then I've taken an hour run and only half an hour of it has to be outside, where I'm leaving the office. And I also have, a set of weights in my office that I can, lift, a kettlebell I can swing while I'm on a call. So building it into my day as opposed to making it all separate gym time. Another way is, riding my bike to work on certain days.
Yeah. That's the thing I have in my office. I have a rule. Anytime I'm crossing the threshold, I got to do 20 reps or something. So
I like that.
I do squats, lunges, what's called push-ups, burpees, stuff like that. So every time I cross the threshold to go out of my office, whether it's get coffee or something like that, I'm doing something.
That's a good one, man. That can be a motherfucker if you really have to piss. I'd have to. Yeah. I like the idea of it at least doing something. And then one thing that I really liked doing for a while was having. So usually I'm seeing, clients come into my office for 1 hour appointments, and was doing 10 reps of something, whether it was, push-ups or pull-ups or, bent over rows. It was something that I would do every single time. And so those little tiny things would be manageable enough to do to where I wasn't dreading doing them and then pushing them off. But throughout the day, I mean, if I'm seeing, 5 or 6 clients in a day, and then you think you multiply that by 10 of whatever I'm doing, or however many reps you're going to do, that adds up throughout the weeks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And studies show it's better for you than doing like hour-long workouts. It's like working out throughout the day and doing stuff. It's actually supposed to be more efficacious than doing other stuff.
Yeah. I think that's what, Pavel, the kettlebell,
got.
Yeah. I think that was increasing the groove, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So how you doing on time?
Got to get off in a couple of minutes, man. But I like this. I like what we're doing here.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of cool stuff, reviewing books that we think every vet or every person listening should read or listen to, and going over some of the things we have in common. But it's fun to be talking with another person. I've been doing the solo host thing for a little while now on my show, and there's only so many thoughts I can bounce off myself.
We got it right now. We actually want to be able to get people like David Goggins on so that we can both interview them and talk to them and get things done. So how does that happen? It happens when you guys go out there and you review our podcasts, right? Get on there on iTunes and just tell people what's going on here. Tell people exactly what we do here. And share the episodes out.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Sharing it through Facebook, sharing it through just clicking that share button. I know how that works on iTunes. You can click and share and text it to a friend. Reviewing, simply putting some stars down, what you think what it is to you, and then leaving a review. That really helps us out in the ratings. But solely for the purpose, because I don't make any money off this, but my goal is just to reach as many people who need to find that drive, that purpose. And so, especially if you know someone who could benefit from this, share that with them and then tell them why they should listen to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're both there with that. I mean, tell people if you find something that's helped you out, give it to somebody that can also be helped by it. And that's the big thing. What do you think what do you want to do the next one on?
I think we should either find another book that we both read, or maybe we talk about the ins and outs of ketogenic diet, because I've been diving in and some roadblocks, but I've been also finding some things that I like too. Yeah.
We can get into that stuff. I'm reading Gulag Archipelago right now.
Oh, Solzhenitsyn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And I'm reading it in conjunction with listening to Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Living.
I love that book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going through that one right now. And then I listened to Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, which is a good one too.
Okay, cool. I've read Extreme Ownership. I haven't done Dichotomy of Leadership yet.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one, man. I like that one a lot. So we can talk about it. If you guys out there have any specific items you want us to cover, let us know as well. We're happy to take some suggestions.
Yeah, and we'll put it out there on social media of asking for feedback or asking for ideas. Well, cool. This has been fun. This has been fun to work on, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
You going to go work out now?
I'm going to work out after I take my kids to school. What the cool thing is, today is my day of the week where I work late, which means my wife and I get to go to the gym together, which is pretty fun.
Oh, nice.
And so I'll do my own thing, and then she'll do her own thing, and then we'll hang out after.
That's awesome. I'm going to be heading to work in about 30 minutes, and then going into a morning meeting and everything like that. And then after that, heading home, and I'm going to work out after work. So
awesome, man. Well, good luck with that.
All right, brother.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.